Amazing turnaround. After one heartbreaking hour at the altar, a kind maid restored his life. Jake stood at the altar, heart thundering like a revving engine. But the joy he anticipated was shattered in an instant. "I can't do this." His fiancée's trembling voice pierced through the murmurs of confusion. As she took a step back, his dreams of a shared future crumbled. Friends' eyes darted, their whispers slicing through him like sharp tools in a mechanic's kit. Humiliation surged as he saw pity instead of support. In that moment, the celebratory warmth of the Texas sun faded to a desolate chill, leaving him gasping for breath amid his lost hope. Jake felt like a ghost at his own wedding, unseen and forgotten. He dedicated himself to her, to a life they both envisioned. But now, the crowded chapel surrounded him like a trap, its walls closing in with each second as despair fled deeper into his gut. Could he even reclaim the pieces of a life he had so meticulously planned? The weight of his community's expectations bore down on him, a suffocating pressure that left him questioning his worth. Jake, the mechanic with a talent for fixing engines, now felt like a rusty cog in a machine that had forgotten him. The chaos simmered just a few blocks away at the local diner, where Maria sat behind the counter. She observed the scene unfold, her heart aching for Jake, the boy who had always shrouded his brilliance under layers of self-doubt. Memories of school days flooded her mind, his quiet smile, the way he fiddled with engines as if they were part of his soul. She admired him from afar, but now, witnessing the community's whispers turned to murmurs of shame, something instinctual rose within her. She couldn't let this break him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks, and the sharp edges of Jake's pain dulled only slightly under Maria's unwavering presence. She became his lifeline, stepping into his life with a gentle push toward the things he tucked away. Together, they found an old junker, its frame rusted and forgotten. To the town, it was trash, but to Jake and Maria, it became a mission, a way to resurrect a piece of himself that his grief had buried. The laughter they shared was contagious, but the shadow of his former life loomed close. Each day, doubt clutched at his throat. What if he never belonged? What if he failed? Could a simple mechanic really aspire to be more? Just as whispers of their progress grew, the familiar voice cut through the air, sending chills down his spine. His fiancée had returned. The memories he thought he'd buried stirred to life, igniting fears he couldn't shake. Now, standing at another crossroads, Jake felt the weight of everything: his past love, his broken outlook, and the new, budding hope Maria had nurtured. What if he chose her only to find that love, too, was an illusion? His hands trembled, caught between the familiar ache of lost dreams or the fragile chance at redemption blooming beside him. The air crackled with the tension of unspoken desires as he faced Maria, their potential together hanging precariously, the question looming: could Jake forsake his pain and embrace the light she offered? Time passed in endless fragments for Jake, each hour tinged with a mix of uncertainty and faint glimmers of resurgence. He stood in the cluttered garage, a sanctuary alive with broken parts and forgotten dreams, an echo of his internal struggle. The old junker they had found, with Maria's laughter providing a backdrop, slowly transformed. Its engine, once silent, began to stir, much like Jake's spirit. Each turn of the wrench felt less like a chore and more like a reclamation of himself. Yet, amid the rising confidence, shadows lurked. The appearance of his fiancée lingered like a familiar storm cloud. Memories flooded his mind: the laughter, the plans, and that first shared smile. They all felt tainted now, marred by the abrupt end of the life he thought he was meant to lead. Each time a friend sought him out, concern etched on their faces, Jake felt compelled to assure them he was fine. But the truth was layered beneath a fragile surface. Maria noticed the heaviness that occasionally clouded his brow. "You know, sometimes facing what scares you is the only way to find the answer," she said one day as they worked on the engine. Her tone was gentle, yet firm, an invitation into deeper introspection. Jake met her gaze, wrestling with the conflicting emotions surging inside him. Could he truly confront what lay unresolved? He could feel the embers of anger and sorrow mixing with the hope she ignited within him. It was terrifying to consider, yet the idea began to take root. "I suppose I keep hoping she'll just disappear," Jake admitted, his voice a low murmur, tinged with the weight of vulnerability. "People don't just disappear, Jake," Maria replied, her eyes steady and kind. "Facing it might be harder, but it's what's necessary. You need to know where you stand with her and with yourself." As night fell, a decision began to form within him. He'd reach out to her. It was daunting. The thought of reopening those wounds made his stomach twist. Yet, another part of him knew that the only way to truly step forward was to confront his past. Under the dim light of the garage, Jake assembled the courage to send a message to his ex-fiancée. His fingers hovered above the screen, uncertainty twisting within him. "Can we talk?" The question felt small, yet monumental, each word dripping with potential. Days passed in anxious anticipation. Every ring of his phone made his heart pound a blend of hope and dread. When finally she replied, the sense of foreboding grew. They agreed to meet a few days later at the diner. As the day arrived, Jake's mind raced. He sat in front of a plate of untouched food, breath steady but heart racing. Was he ready? Would this conversation lead to answers or merely more questions? But before he could spiral into another wave of doubt, something caught his eye. A flicker of familiar energy streamed in through the diner door. Maria. She entered with her characteristic bright smile, radiating strength. In her presence, the storm inside him calmed for a moment, but it soon rekindled as he remembered his task ahead. Their eyes met, and Maria's smile faltered slightly. Concern filled her features. "Jake, are you okay?" she asked, genuine worry tinged with encouragement. "Not yet, but I'm trying to find out." The words flew out before he could catch them, a pulse of determination igniting. Then, before he could shift his focus back, the door swung open, and there she was. His past, walking towards him like a specter, breathing life into the lingering shadows. Jake's heart raced. The moment of truth had arrived. How would he respond? What was he willing to fight for? The air grew heavy with unspoken tension. Nothing would be the same after this. Would he embrace the possibility of closure, or allow himself to remain shackled by what once was? The very essence of his journey to reclaim control over his life depended on this confrontation. Jake's breath hitched in his throat as she approached. The once familiar cadence of her steps now felt foreign. Her presence conjured memories that conflicted with the aspirations of a new beginning. He felt both nostalgic and suffocated. Her hair, still flowing in soft waves, evoked whispers of joy and warmth. Yet all he recalled now were the echoes of a shattered future. "Jake," she said, her voice carrying an uncertainty that mirrored his own inner turmoil. He sat still, captivated by the complexity of this moment. For the first time in a long while, he was confronted with the possibility of truly listening. "Thank you for meeting me," he managed, trying to breach the chasm of awkward silence. Each word was a fragile bridge towards the conversation he needed to have. "I wasn't sure if you wanted to. You sent the message so suddenly." She shrugged, her eyes darting around the diner before settling on his. "How have you been?" The question felt loaded. How does one summarize a whirlwind of change? A deep breath steadied him. "I'm trying to figure things out." "Me too," she replied, honesty brimming beneath her carefully constructed facade. A fleeting thought stirred in Jake's mind. What if this was an opportunity for both of them to traverse the unresolved paths? Yet, with each moment of eye contact, he was reminded of the pain they shared. "Let us be honest," he began, cutting through the hesitation that enveloped them like swirling smoke. "We can't both keep pretending this isn't difficult." She nodded, her demeanor softening. "I felt lost after that day." Her admission resonated deeply within him, a reminder of the mutual suffering they both endured. "Lost isn't the only thing we are now," Jake stated, feeling the embers of resilience ignite within him. The walls he built around his heart began to crumble as he leaned deeper into the reality of the conversation, rather than avoiding it. "What do you mean?" she probed, her brows knitting together. He paused, collecting his thoughts, "that we can't allow these feelings of loss to define us. There was a future we envisioned, and now we stand with two options: either fight for that vision or let it slip away entirely. Shadows flickered across her face, and for a while, she seemed paralyzed by the weight of his words. Have you fought for our future, or have you simply run from it? Jake's mouth felt dry, but he pressed on, admitting to the truth. I've been somewhere between both. Maria entered the fray of the conversation, her presence anchoring him further. Confronting your fears doesn't mean you have to reconcile everything right now. It's about taking one step at a time. What do you want to happen next? The honesty struck him like a sudden jolt. Did he actually want to reclaim what they lost? Or was his true desire simply to find peace? His expression shifted as he interlaced his thoughts with consciousness. We need to decide where we are headed, even if that means accepting our lives may take a completely different shape. She regarded him with intensity, the atmosphere vibrating with intensity. Her eyes searched for his truth, reflecting the dilemma they both faced. Jake, are you saying we should try again? Or should we let go? He felt the current of fear and hope swirl violently within him. Could he muster the bravery to navigate the boundaries of this conversation without alienating either of them? I think we owe it to ourselves to explore the possibility, he said, embracing the echo of change. The direction he chose now could either mark the start of recovery or overshadow him with regret. Before she could respond, Maria's hand on his shoulder snapped him back. Jake, you can't ignore what awaits you. This is a turning point. Make sure your decision is for you, not just to relive the past. Her words pierced straight to his core. In a single moment, clarity blossomed. He realized his own values had been neglected, hidden beneath the chaos of his past. As he absorbed the weight of it all, a quiet certainty emerged. Maybe this wasn't just about her. It was about him, his choice, his path forward. Let us figure this out together, he said, feeling a newfound determination surging through him. The path ahead was clouded, but together, they might begin to see a way through. Jake's heart raced with uncertainty, but as he stared back at her, there was a flicker of hope. In that quiet din of the diner filled with flickering lights and clattering plates, he was reminded that the voices chanting against change were often the loudest just before transformation. But lingering in the back of his mind was Maria's reminder. He needed to confront his own fears first before he could ever hope to move forward. As their discussion deepened, the door swung open once again, the energy shifting, only for a moment, leaving Jake wondering if fate had more in store for him. Could the world truly be ready for the new Jake, or would remnants of the old shadow him at every turn? The lingering silence deepened as Jake and Maria exchanged tentative glances, the energy in the diner shifting like the weather outside. Jake's heart beat with a mix of anxiety and anticipation, signaling a watershed moment in both their lives. Yet, as the door swung open, it was not just the familiar jangle of the bell that caught his attention. It was the figure that stepped through, framing the entrance with an air of confidence that demanded notice. Hey, is this seat taken? The voice was smooth, almost teasing, but it held an edge of something sharper. Jake turned to see a woman in her late 20s, a vibrant presence that seemed to spark energy within the room. He didn't recognize her, but the moment filled him with uneasy curiosity. What do you think? She quipped, positioning herself at their booth as if she belonged there. Maria shot Jake a fleeting look, one that conveyed both annoyance and a flicker of amusement. This is an ongoing conversation. Perfect. I love a good chat. The woman leaned forward, uninvited curiosity glinting in her eyes. I'm Lila. I saw the intensity from across the room and figured, why not? Jake felt a sudden dissonance, a collision of their fragile moment with the chaotic energy Lila injected into the scene. He mentally shook off the disruption, focusing instead on Maria. We're navigating a complicated discussion, he said, wincing slightly. Complicated is my middle name, Lila interjected, her tone playful yet piercing. But let us make it interesting, shall we? Despite his intention to shield their conversation, Jake couldn't help but be intrigued by her emphasis on excitement. It sparked a question in him. Why was he drawn to this chaotic energy, even as it threatened to derail what he'd begun to build with Maria? Lila, Maria interrupted, her voice steady. We were just talking about our past. It's not quite the right moment for distractions. But distractions can be enlightening. Lila's response was quick, offering a bold challenge to the tension in the booth. The past shapes us, but what's important is how we thrive in the now. So, Jake, what is stopping you from living your truth? You seem stuck in a loop. The question struck deep. Jake felt the sharp pang of self-reflection. He wrestled with his confidence, not certain if he had the right to share his feelings, his dilemmas laid bare before this stranger. Yet, he recognized that Lila was right. He had been too focused on what went wrong instead of envisioning what could be. Maybe it's fear, he admitted, his voice low, fear of what a decision will mean. Fear is natural, yet holding you back is not. Lila leaned in, her voice firm but encouraging. Sometimes we need to dive headfirst into chaos to find clarity. What if I told you that unexpected freedom often follows chaos? In that moment, something within Jake shifted. He glanced at Maria, whose eyes reflected a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. It wasn't he that Lila had the answers. It was that she forced him to confront himself, prompting him to question what he truly desired versus what he thought he should pursue. Freedom. Jake echoed the word, weighing its significance. What does that even look like for me? Only you can define it, Lila said, simple yet profound. But here's the catch: it might be uncomfortable. And that's okay. Jake's mind raced. Could he embrace discomfort? Maria's hand on his shoulder felt grounding, a reminder of the connection he didn't want to lose. Yet he also felt the urge to explore this new path. The flood of possibilities filled him with both gratitude and trepidation. I think you're right, Lila, he finally replied, a spark of determination igniting inside him. I can't keep letting fear dictate my choices. The atmosphere shifted, tension transforming into curiosity as Lila flashed a winning smile. Now we're getting somewhere. So what's your first move? Jake took a deep breath, savoring the exhilaration of the moment. I don't know what it will look like yet, but I do know I'm ready to confront it, even if it means facing the uncomfortable realities of my life. Lila nodded approvingly, fueling his newfound resolve. That's the spirit, but always remember, clarity grows from chaos. The road ahead won't be linear, but it can be transformative if you approach it boldly. As Jake contemplated the implications of his words, he felt a surge of possibility. Maybe breakthrough didn't require scattered brilliance. Perhaps it only needed the right questions wrapped in chaos. As their unlikely trio sat in the booth, Jake sensed the unfolding of something significant. Yet, somewhere in the depths of his resolve laid a haunting reality: would he be able to navigate both his past and the uncertainty of this new journey ahead? Before he could fully reconcile these competing emotions, the conversation took a different turn with Lila's next question. So, Jake, if you could define what you want to reclaim or reshape, what would it be? The tension hung thick, and he realized the answer would require more bravery than he ever anticipated. Jake felt the capacity of that question settle over him, heavy and complicated. The air around the table thickened with possibilities, hanging like a storm cloud ready to unleash its rain. What did he want to reclaim or reshape? The more he thought about it, the more he understood that this wasn't just a trivial choice. It was a reckoning with himself, the core of his identity. His gaze shifted from Lila's vibrant confidence to Maria's watchful expression. What would she think if he betrayed their conversation and unraveled a deeper truth? Did she feel the same suffocating clamp of expectations? Instinctively, he clenched his fists under the table, the pressure of wanting to be truthful battling against years of hesitation and the pressing worry of disapproval. To reclaim, I think I want to reshape my career, he finally voiced, breaking the painful silence. The words felt foreign, yet liberating as they flowed from his lips. I've been a marketing consultant for so long. It's comfortable, and maybe that's the problem. I used to dream about doing something impactful, something I felt passionate about. Impactful, Lila echoed, leaning closer, her excitement palpable. What does that mean for you? What's the dream? Jake's mind raced. Could he articulate it? I've always been drawn to storytelling, he admitted slowly, like the stories behind brands. But what really moves me is storytelling in a larger sense, helping people share their own stories, their struggles, and triumphs. Maria shifted slightly, her brow furrowing. That sounds ambitious, but how do you plan to turn those dreams into reality? It's a big step. Maybe I could start a podcast or a blog, he mused, warming to the idea as fragments of his long-buried aspirations began to coalesce. I could create a platform for people to express themselves and connect. But he hesitated. What if it's not good enough? What if nobody listens? Fear again, Lila interjected with a bemused expression. You're letting that fear hinder you before you take the first step. What if it goes well? What if you could be the catalyst for someone else's change? Hesitation twisted like a knife in his gut. Was he even capable of that? He replayed past failures in his mind, the projects that floundered, the pitches that bombed, the rejection letters that felt like quiet whispers of inadequacy. But beneath that familiar narrative began a flicker of defiance. What if he embraced this passion instead of succumbing to self-doubt? Determination ignited a new ember within him. I'm going to try. I'll take a leap, maybe take a few classes, learn the craft, build the skills. I'm tired of watching life pass me by while I'm stuck in a comfortable cage. Maria's hand squeezed his shoulder lightly, a sign of unexpected support that ignited his resolve further. His pent-up desire flared, filling the space around them with the promise of change, however daunting. Good. That essay start, Lila said, her enthusiasm infectious. But don't stop there, set yourself a timeline. Get specific. Dream beyond your fears, and see what happens. Even the smallest steps can lead to profound transformations. As Lila's words sank in, Jake immediately grasped something essential. This was uncharted territory, a place where he had to confront not only his desires, but also the very real challenges of pursuing them. Achieving clarity meant embracing discomfort, failing, and possibly rising again. He understood he had to create opportunities that felt right, no matter how daunting they seemed. I can do this, he muttered softly to himself, confidence swelling like a tide. But with the swell of hope came the stark realization that putting dreams into motion often comes at a price. The once comforting familiarity of his career beckoned him like a siren's song, promising safety at the cost of his passion. He was at the precipice of a decision, and the tension spiraling back to Maria made it overwhelmingly complicated. Jake, what if in pursuing this, we lose what we have? Maria asked quietly, her voice thick with uncertainty. Her eyes searched his for reassurance, a lifeline in these tumultuous, transformative waters. The question hung before him, raw and exposed. Life was about choices, and sometimes those choices demanded sacrifices. How could he ask her to understand when even he was still grappling with the enormity of it all? The room around him faded momentarily as he turned inward, searching for the words that could bridge both aspirations and relationships. He could feel the shift of the moment, the unveiling of the crossroads he stood upon, his next move defined not just by ambition, but by the heart that lay within both of them. But as the weight of the moment pressed, one thought emerged with clarity. Would he dare to follow his heart if it meant risking everything he had? Jake took a deep breath, prepared to forge ahead. The question of risk hung in the air, its answer potentially reshaping the very fabric of their lives. Jake's mind churned as he navigated the ripples of uncertainty that Maria's question had stirred. Life was a tightrope, a thin line he now balanced upon. One wrong step could change everything. He needed clarity, but the clutter of his thoughts kept him from seeing the path ahead. Let us not think about losing what we have just yet, he said finally, his voice steadier than he felt. I need to focus on what I could gain. He wished he sounded more convinced. Maria's expression softened but lingered on the edge of concern. But what about the comfort we've built? It's not just a career shift. What if altering your life impacts us? She searched his face, looking for an answer she desperately wanted to believe. Jake regarded her carefully. Her fears mirrored many of his own, deeply rooted in the connections they had forged. Yet the envisioning of a new life without those bonds seared him with dread. But then there was the aching dissatisfaction with the routine that had shackled him for years. Jake clenched his jaw and pushed through the heaviness of that realization. I feel like I can't keep pretending to be satisfied just because it's safe, he exhorted. I owe it to myself and to us to explore what I truly want. But it could go wrong, she countered, her eyes glistening with worry, edging on desperation. What if this journey you're on drags me down with you when it fails? Her words were a cold splash of water, throwing him back into the realm of reality where dreams didn't always align with results. Jake internally recoiled at the prospect of bringing her down. Yet, what if it didn't fail? What if that very risk opened doors to a version of himself he had yet to meet? The battle raged within him, the need for independence against the desire for security. Sitting at a desk for another decade, one T complete me. I'd be walking a road that's not mine. His tone wavered under the weight of his feelings. Jake hadn't meant to lash out, but the frustration bubbled over. Maria's eyes widened. Those dreams don't make you oblivious to reality. You can't just wish it all away. I'm not wishing it away. He interrupted, a sharpness creeping into his voice, startling them both. I'm trying to figure out how to live this one life properly. To make it count. I want to help others. I want to tell stories that matter. The silence that followed felt like the aftermath of a thunderstorm, heavy and almost electric. He inhaled deeply, reminding himself he was in unfamiliar territory, where dreams faced reality head-on. While he prepared for resistance, he hadn't considered how deeply the discussion would impact Maria. I just fear that chasing this ambition might wreck our chances of a stable future, she confessed finally, softening. The truth in her words stung, ignited doubt. How could he convince her that his aim didn't naturally lead to instability? Let us come up with a plan together, he proposed, finding his voice trembling but firm. A real plan. I can take classes, start small, and see where it leads. Maria's hesitance flickered in her gaze. And if it leads nowhere? Then at least I tried. You always said you admired my ambition. I need you to believe in me and in us. Will you? The sincerity of his question pierced through his frustration, relinquishing a softness he hadn't realized that they both craved. For a moment, strife waged within her. Then a small nod came. As long as we chart the course together. I can't abandon you to this alone. But, Jake, you must promise to keep us in the picture, she cautioned, her voice barely above a whisper. Hope surged in Jake's chest as he mirrored her nod, feeling their connection shift, settling into a trust that was transformative. But the journey lay ahead, fraught with the uncertainties both craved and feared. Okay, let us sketch out a timeline, he said, the resolve stealing within him. The energy in the room shifted as they shared tentative smiles, each feeling the light of possibility. But with the promise of hope came the persistent specter of risk, a reminder of the steep walls climbing ever higher. As they embarked on their newfound path through brainstorming ideas, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing at the edge of his own transformation, every brilliant thought accompanied by an ever-present shadow of doubt. What if his aspirations took a turn that neither of them could anticipate, altering everything once again? Just then, a sharp ping from his phone broke through their quiet moment. He glanced at the screen and felt his heart drop. A familiar name flashed across it, a name he hadn't expected to see again. His stomach twisted as he swiped the message open, revealing a challenge that could either catapult him closer to his dreams or drag him further into chaos. The crossroads loomed, thrumming with a tension that felt electric. This decision could change everything. Would he respond? The thought raced through his mind as he faced yet another potential turning point that threatened to redefine the landscape of his ambitions and their lives together. Jake stared at the screen of his phone, the swift rise of adrenaline making his palms clammy. The name flickered like an old film reel, calling forth memories he thought he had left behind. It was Nathan, his former boss from the publishing house, the man who had once laid down the law and dictated Jake's every move. But now, he texted offering an opportunity, a potential freelance project, a chance to work on a significant piece for a well-regarded publication. It felt like a lifeline thrown into tumultuous waters. Who is it? Maria asked, raising an eyebrow, the light from his phone casting a glow that accentuated her curious expression. Nathan, Jake replied, his voice a mixture of surprise and apprehension. He wants to know if I'm interested in a project. Maria's lips pressed into a thin line, a flicker of concern crossing her features. The same Nathan who told you that your ideas were too ambitious? The one who didn't believe in you? He could hear the subtle warning in her tone. Yet, some part of him felt drawn to the challenge. This was a personal test, a chance at redemption. Yeah, but this project could be different. Perhaps it's a way to prove him wrong. Jake replied, his determination bubbling up. Are you ready to dive back into that world? She asked, shifting slightly in her seat. You just said you want to explore new paths. Jake exhaled, the weight of her question pressing down on him. I can't deny this is tempting. It's closer to what I want to do. I can start making meaningful connections again. Maybe I can show him I've changed. And what if it takes you right back to where you started? She countered, her eyes wide with concern. It could be a step back rather than a step forward. He felt the familiar sting of doubt creeping in, but beneath it burned a spark of ambition he hadn't felt in years. He had to weigh the risks. Could he seize this opportunity without losing sight of his newfound resolve? The thought tugged at him. Look, I know the risks, but if I really am going to make this change in my life, I need to face these situations. I need to risk the discomfort, Jake argued, his heart racing. After all, pushing boundaries often felt uncomfortable. She released a soft sigh, clearly still weighing her own concerns. I just worry that you'll compromise what we've talked about your dreams. His resolve faltered momentarily under her scrutiny, but he kept grounding himself in his potential. I want tea, Maria. This is not just about the job. It's my chance to redefine myself, to tell stories instead of just organizing them. Even if Nathan doesn't see it yet, I will show him. Maria studied him for a moment as if searching for hidden fractures in his armor. Finally, she nodded, albeit hesitantly. Okay, but remember your commitment to us. Just don't lose sight of who you are in the process. Jake bit his lip and grinned, a sense of determination building. I promise, no matter where this leads, it's not going to change my focus on us. I need you alongside me. He straightened and pulled the phone back into view, fingers trembling slightly as he formulated a response to Nathan. The clock was ticking, and so was the weight of his decision. He understood that this was more than just a comeback. It was a declaration of his intent for the life he yearned to lead. Instantly, his mind raced with strategies and ideas, unraveling the possibilities that lay within the project. It could be the stepping stone or the trap. He took a breath, preparing to respond, and just as he was about to type, his phone rang. Jake hesitated, an anxious knot tightening in his stomach. He glanced at the screen again. It was Nathan, calling directly. This wasn't just a proposal anymore, it was a confrontation. He needed to make a choice, one that would demand clarity and confidence. The moment felt fragile, alive with tension. As he pressed the green button, he felt the electricity of anticipation swirl around him. Would he embrace the chaos, step back into the arena, and challenge the demons of his past? There were too many unknowns lurking in the shadows of this new chapter. Here goes nothing, Jake muttered under his breath, ready to dive into both his past and future as the line connected. What awaited him on the other end of the line could change everything, again. Jake, good to hear from you. Nathan's voice resonated with an authoritative timbre that startled Jake, sending ripples of nostalgia and lingering resentment coursing through him. Hey Nathan, Jake replied, trying not to sound too uncertain, masking his underlying turmoil with a forced calm. Straight to the point, Nathan continued, tone brisk. I need someone who can bring fresh ideas and a unique perspective to this new project. I think you might be the right fit. Jake's heart danced erratically. Was this a genuine acknowledgement of his growth, or merely a desperate attempt to fill a gap? Fearing a slide back into the old paradigm, he gathered his thoughts, remembering his goal. I appreciate that you thought of me, but I have to be clear I'm not looking to go back to my old role. I want to explore stories in a new way, Jake stated, tension brimming beneath every word. Of course, I'm aware of that, which is why I'm proposing this project, Nathan countered, a hint of impatience edging his voice. You'd be creating content that speaks to a wider audience, something you've wanted to do, right? The throwback to his previous aspirations nudged something deep within Jake, fear of falling into a again familiar trap. In a different life, he accepted Nathan's vision unquestioningly. But now, the realization struck him. He was terrified of this very prospect. The life he dreamed about hung tantalizingly close, but he needed to play his cards right. You know, it's not just about the audience, Jake began, each word coiling with caution. It's about authenticity. It's about telling the right story, the way it needs to be told, not just packing it into a formula. Right, but impact matters, Nathan interjected. A piece like this could shape your career, Jake. It's a chance to get published in a top-tier magazine. Jake felt the facade of space and choice dissolve. Familiarity threatened to suffocate the aspirations he now held dear. Look, it's not just about getting published. It's about doing work that I believe in. This isn't just any job. With every sentence, he felt the tide of doubt recede slightly, replaced by a swell of conviction. Fine, Let us say you have a view you want to maintain. But what if refining that view eventually earns you the platform you're seeking? You need to compromise, Nathan said, leaning in, trying to pull Jake back into the fold of pragmatism. Jake's stomach twisted. Compromise or sell out? I need space to create, Nathan, not just fulfill someone else's vision. I have my own path now. A pregnant pause hung in the air. Jake's heart thudded in the quiet. All right, let us pivot, Nathan finally said, thunderingly unyielding yet a fraction more understanding. How about we brainstorm together? Your insights, my direction, let us see if we can forge something that works for both sides. The proposition ignited a flicker of hope in Jake. Could collaboration actually allow him to assert his voice while satisfying Nathan's expectations? It was risky, but the fact that Nathan was willing to bend was an opportunity he had to entertain. It also signaled a change. Nathan was acknowledging Jake's potential. I like that idea, Jake said, deciding with intent. I want to be involved in shaping this project, not just executing it blindly. I'll work on a pitch that aligns with my vision. Great. Let us set up a time to discuss details, Nathan replied, this time with unexpected enthusiasm. Hanging up, Jake felt the tension seep away, replaced with a nuanced blend of apprehension and excitement. The line between hope and trepidation felt thin. He was treading a precarious path that wove between proving his worth and retaining his autonomy. Outside, the world held vibrant colors, brighter than he had noticed in ages. He had taken the leap, standing at the intersection of confidence and vulnerability, ready to forge his identity anew. But as he stared at the ceiling, doubts began to creep in. Was he truly ready to navigate this fragile journey? In this dance with temptation, could he cling to himself without slipping back into old narratives? Jake shifted, making immediate notes about themes and directions for the project. But a deeper, unsettling question whirled in his mind. At what cost would he achieve his aspirations? That complicated thought trailed him as he drifted into contemplation. The next chapter awaited, and he felt both exhilaration and dread gripping him, an undeniable urge to dive deeper into the abyss of his ambition while balancing the wisdom he had gleaned from the past. But first, he had to confront the next challenge. Nathan's vision may have changed, but so too did his own sense of direction. What would that look like now? Jake awoke early the next morning, the dawn light spilling over the edges of his window, illuminating the remnants of his thoughts from the previous night. Excitement entwined with anxiety as he recalled his conversation with Nathan. The prospect of collaboration was exhilarating, yet it bore the weight of uncharted territory. His heart raced as he considered the pitch he needed to create, a pitch that wouldn't just represent his ideas, but his newfound self. Sitting at his small desk, cluttered with remnants of past projects and half-finished sketches, Jake opened his laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing a blank document that felt both inviting and intimidating. He exhaled sharply, stifling a rising tide of doubt that threatened to drown his determination. He had to remind himself that this was, indeed, a brave reimagining of his professional identity. As he typed tentative titles for the pitch, he found himself hesitating. What story to tell? What message to convey? With each keystroke, he felt the layers of expectation pressing down on him. The old Jake, the eager subordinate, ever ready to please, was still lurking in the shadows, urging him to conform to a version of himself that had stifled his creativity for too long. He couldn't afford to let that version lead him back down the road of mediocrity. He pushed through, jotting down fragmented ideas that danced around themes of authenticity and social impact. The words flowed quicker now, buoyed by a sense of purpose he hadn't accessed in years. Each idea represented a piece of himself, a blend of his struggles and revelations, the very essence of what he aspired to achieve. He wanted the audience to feel a pulse of truth, a connection that transcended mere entertainment. Hours passed as he delved deeper, yet moments of uncertainty continued to interrupt his flow. He paused, leaning back in his chair, trying to sift through the mental clutter. Securing his integrity during this project was paramount, but was he truly skilled enough to execute it? Questions gnawed at his mind like persistent insects. He closed his eyes, imagining the pitch presentation. Would Nathan actually resonate with his vision, or would he attempt to fit Jake's story back into his formulaic mold? Would this approach sharpen Jake's voice, or dilute it in the cacophony of competing ideas. Time-wise, Jake snapped the lid of his laptop shut and decided to clear his head. He stepped outside, welcomed by crisp air that invigorated his senses. The world bustled with a life that mirrored his internal flux. He watched people come and go, families enjoying the morning sun, joggers chasing dawn, and the barista crafting the perfect pour. Life was vibrant in its authenticity, something he needed to harness in his work. Despite the uncertainty that lingered, Jake felt a remarkable sense of clarity unfurling within him. The pitch was not merely about words on a paper. It was an extension of who he was becoming. There was no room for compromise. He had to remain committed to executing his vision wholeheartedly. His phone buzzed, vibrating with a reminder for the scheduled brainstorming session with Nathan later in the afternoon. This was the pivotal moment he needed to prepare for. He would face Nathan's critiques head-on, armed with his ideas informed by his struggles and triumphs. With determination blooming in his chest, Jake returned home, focused on synthesizing his notes into a coherent narrative. He outlined his pitch, ensuring every point reflected his experience, his values. He had decided that authenticity wasn't just a buzzword. It was paramount. As the afternoon sunlight dimmed and the horizon turned amber, Jake saved his document, pride wrapping around him like a warm embrace. But with it came the haunting question: what if Nathan didn't believe in him? The clock ticked ever closer to their meeting. The moment loomed large, and Jake swallowed hard, wrestling with the realization that in this pursuit, he was on the precipice of something monumental, a confrontation not only with Nathan, but with his own insecurities. What awaited him once they sat across from each other? The answer shimmered tantalizingly in the air. One pivotal conversation could redefine his journey completely. Jake stood in the conference room, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights overhead a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within him. An array of notes and papers adorned the polished table, each bearing the weight of his dreams and fears. Today was the day he would unveil his vision to Nathan. The anticipation coiled tighter in his stomach, each tick of the clock a reminder that he was teetering on the edge of transformation. As Nathan entered, a wave of familiarity washed over Jake, memories of old insecurities tugging at him, desperate to draw him back into the labyrinth of doubt. But today, he was no longer that subservient employee. Today, he was ready to prove that he had evolved. "Hey, Nathan. Thanks for meeting with me," Jake began, striving for a calm he didn't fully feel. "Let us dive in," Nathan replied, his expression a mix of intrigue and skepticism as he settled into his seat. Jake took a deep breath, ready to unleash the amalgamation of his aspirations and newfound resolve. Over the next hour, he spoke passionately, recounting the story behind his dream, the need for authentic narratives, the importance of connection in storytelling, and how he envisioned merging these elements into something that could resonate with others. Nathan listened intently, and as Jake laid out his ideas, he felt a transformation within himself, his voice firm and unwavering, each word a testament to his commitment. As he concluded, he looked to Nathan for a response. The silence that followed felt monumental, echoing the weight of his hopes. "That's a bold direction, Jake," Nathan finally said, his tone contemplative. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this." Jake's heart raced. This was the moment he had fought for. "I'm ready to take risks. I want to contribute meaningfully, not just fill a spot. I'm ready for this," he asserted, willing the fear to recede and showcasing his newfound confidence. Nathan regarded him with a critical eye, then offered a nod. "I respect that. I see potential here. Let us refine it together." The relief flooded Jake, but it was more than that, a surge of empowerment. This could be the beginning of a new chapter, a forceful assertion of who he had become. Days turned into weeks as Jake immersed himself in his freelance project. Each hour spent crafting stories felt like a rediscovery of himself, experiencing a surge of creativity that he hadn't felt in years. The shift began to permeate into his daily life as well. He tackled technical challenges with renewed vigor, rekindling his love for mechanics alongside storytelling. Finally, it seemed that he was marrying both passions, crafting narratives around the stories of the people whose lives he had touched. Just as Maria had inspired him, he reached out to those buried aspirations, seeking connections, and listening intently to untold stories. Through community engagement, he crafted videos and content that authentically reflected the struggles and triumphs of individuals who resonated with his own journey. Jake began to build a small platform where people shared their experiences, a space for genuine storytelling that ignited hope and understanding, flourishing into a movement of its own. The recognition Jake garnered felt surreal, yet deserved. Local media caught wind of his initiative, and he was invited to speak at events, positioning him as a voice not just for himself, but for countless others. No longer was he the meek mechanic who once feared stepping out of expectation. He had emerged as a beacon of courage and creativity. Amid this whirlwind of achievement, Maria stood firmly by his side. They celebrated each milestone together, their relationship blossoming in this newfound shared space of ambition and support. Jake learned to communicate more openly about his aspirations, discussing projects and goals with her gladly. In a celebratory evening at the diner where they often discussed dreams and fears, Jake took Maria's hand. "I couldn't have done this without you," he admitted, sincerity in his voice. The very act of sharing both triumph and vulnerability reflected the depth of their bond, an acknowledgement of the growth they had fostered together. Finally, he had achieved recognition not only from his peers, but also from himself. He had conquered self-doubt, transformed dreams into tangible realities, and forged a career that not only fitted his skills, but fulfilled his soul. Looking around, he embraced the laughter shared and the stories yet to unfold, knowing he was now firmly rooted in a life he had passionately carved out. Jake had proven to himself what it truly meant to lean into his fears, to awaken those aspirations left dormant for too long. With every achievement, he felt grounded, confident that the path ahead was his to shape. And with that final realization, Jake smiled, knowing that he had overcome not only for himself, but for those who had yet to follow their own stories. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible transformations and emotional journeys. This is the moment to show your support for these profound stories. Leave a like now to amplify the message. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of personal growth. Together, we can inspire change and celebrate the human spirit.